Hey, welcome. My name is Alan Simpson. I did a short course on showing how to use JavaScript and Firebase for a hit counter. Count how many times each page in your website gets hit and where the last hit came from and so forth. Somebody asked, could you also use that same technique to keep track of bad links, like where someone comes in and they have a bad link, so they get an error 404. Could I grab those and then once I realize that the bad link is out there, redirect them someplace else? And the answer is sure, of course, and in fact you can use the exact same code for most of it. But there are a couple of caveats. For one, you're probably going to have to change the htaccess file on your web server, and you don't want to mess around with that. You don't know what's in there, that whatever's in there might be important. So if you're going to change it, make sure you download a copy of it. Save a copy of it called htaccess original, and don't touch that one. Go ahead and work in .htaccess, upload it back to the server. If things go bad, just dump that one, rename the original back to .htaccess and put that up there. If you don't do that, if you mess up your .htaccess file, then your site's not going to work. People aren't going to be able to get to it, and I can't help you, and neither can anybody else, because we don't know what was in that file either. So if you don't understand exactly what I'm talking about right here, maybe you shouldn't do this, because I'm assuming a certain level of competence here, and if you're not there, you could end up making a mess for yourself that we can't help you with. The second caveat isn't as dire. It's just that on a Mac, any file name that starts with a dot is usually hidden by default. So you might be able to see it in your FTP app, your editor, but when you go into Finder, you might not see that file there. Don't drive yourself crazy thinking it's not there. Press Command plus Shift plus dot, the period, and that should bring any of those files out of hiding in that Mac folder. And again, I'm talking about a folder that you're looking at in Finder in Mac here. Okay, so that's enough with the caveats. I just want people to be aware that this isn't really a computer beginner kind of thing. There's some tricky stuff in this one. Obviously, if you're a pro and you can do this kind of stuff in your sleep, then it's no big deal. Now, I'm not going to go through this at the pace of a course either. I'm just going to kind of whip through it, and I'll give you all the code. And then, if you need to take the course, that's fine. I'll give you a link. Otherwise, you can just use the code as is. Here, I'll start by creating a new empty folder for my website. I'll call it Trapper for lack of a better name. Then I'll open that folder in my code editor, which happens to be VS Code. Of course, it's empty since it's a brand new site and just a folder at this point. And then I'll create a couple pages. I'll speed it up a little here because these are just regular old web pages, nothing fancy about them. In real life, you would probably already have a home page, index.html, so you might create this notfound.html page. You can call it anything you want, but this is going to be where I initially send bad links. Okay, and when I open it in the browser, it looks like that. Okay, so in your case, you may have just added a page called notfound.html. Now, I can't guarantee this is going to work with all hosting providers because there's a million of them out there, and I can't dictate how they do their thing. But chances are there's going to be a .htaccess file in the root folder of your website. You want to use FTP or whatever to copy that down to your own computer, then immediately make a copy of it, call it htaccess original or something, so you always have that one as a backup in case you really mess things up here. Now, I'm not going to go through all that. I'm just going to create a new file called .htaccess and add one line to it. In your situation, you might be adding that line to an htaccess that already has a bunch of stuff in it. Anyway, the line you need is error document, no space, then a space, then 404, then a space, then the path to where you want to send the bad traffic. I used /notfound.html, which is going to send all the bad traffic to that notfound.html page I just put in the root folder. Okay, now to test this stuff, you can't just do the old right-click and view in browser because that's not going to execute the 404. Even if I go to a bad link here, like something that doesn't exist, it's not going to get caught. I'm still going to get a 404 error, all right, because nothing's been handled yet. To test the htaccess, you have to run it through an actual web server. I'm going to use amps on my machine. I'm going to start by running that as administrator. That ensures that on Windows it can update your host file. Okay, and then in amps, I'm going to add a domain. And that's really just the folder, that Trapper folder I created. So here I need to put in the path to that folder, which is on my desktop. I replace the Windows backslashes with forward slashes. The name could be just about anything. I'll call it trapper.local. The first and last checkboxes should be checked. You don't need an SSL entry for local. Now it's telling me access denied. It can't update my host file, but the fact that I ran it as administrator probably will be able to. So I'll click Add Domain, hope for the best, and it says done, added the domain, great. Now I'll click Go to Domain Manage. I'm going to click this host file contents and see if it was able to add it, and it did indeed. I can tell because I see that trapper.local name down here, so I'm ready to go. Now this does not make the site available to the public. It simply allows me to test as though it were available to the public so that my htaccess code executes when I serve the page to myself. And to serve it to myself, I click its name up here in the top half of the screen, and that will serve it, and it will open to the home page, index.html. Just like before when I did it with View and Browser, except for it actually runs it through a web server now, so I can test my htaccess file. And to test that, I'll just browse to something I know doesn't exist in this site, such as /wingnut. When I press enter to try to get there, htaccess says, I have no idea what wingnut is, so I'm going to send you to this other page named notfound.html, which says I am not found.html. So I've handled the error in the sense that I'm not getting the 404 error page anymore. I'm getting a page I want. But if this had happened to Joey Bag of Donuts out in Cucamonga and I didn't know anything about it, I might never know this bad link exists. So the next question becomes, can I collect these things as they come in so I know what bad links are out there and I can handle them? And the answer is yes, you can. You need a database to store them. If you don't happen to have one handy, a quick and easy and free way to set one up is to do a Firebase real-time database like we did in my hit counter course. And in fact, I'm going to use that exact same database here. I'm going to put the bad links in a separate node so they don't get mixed in with the good hits. And in fact, all I'm going to show here, though, is the bad hits. So I have to browse out to firebase.google.com, where all the free Firebase stuff is located at Google. I'm already signed in. I can tell because I can see my picture over there, so I don't need to sign in. If you are doing this, you would either have to sign in, or if you didn't even have an account yet, you'd have to create an account and then sign in. It's free, so don't worry about that. But since I'm already signed in, I can click Go to Console. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, you'd have to hit Add Project, give it a name like Hit Counter or something, and then click Real-Time Database. I already have a bunch of projects I've created. I'm going to use the one I created called Hit Counter. Then click Get Started on the database option here, and that takes you to your database. You don't have to design a database or anything. In fact, if you just see a name like that, followed by some number, that's good enough. But you do have to make sure it's accessible. So you want to click Rules here and make sure that both read and write are set to true with no quotation marks. Now you'll see constant reminders that you're basically making this public, so virtually anybody could read or write to it. However, you're not exposing it in the sense that you're not going to be making any forums or anything. Nobody's going to know it's there. There's nothing valuable in it. So you really need to have the rules set to true. Just like that, again, notice there's no quotation marks around the words true, but there are quotation marks around everything else. Okay? And then you can click data when you want to go back and look at your data. Now, I don't have anything data in there right now. I just cleared it out before doing this demo. But that's my little database. So then you want to click this home thing here. All right, and then add Firebase to your web app. Then you want to copy that code they give you. Don't use my code. You got to use your own code. All right, and paste it into your not found.html page right under that heading, so it's the last chunk of code before the closing body tag. Now you also need the code that writes the data to the database, and that's going to be the same code as my hit counter class. I'm not going to repeat all that here. I'm just going to paste it in, and I'll also make it available from the description for this video so you can just use it as is. But basically it's the same as in the class. The only difference is that instead of writing it to page counts, I'm writing it to a different node called bad counts so that I can tell the difference between bad ones and good ones. All right, but other than that, it's exactly the same code. All right, so once that's in there, close and save that. What's different now, if I run this from amps, okay, same as before, just run it. And I'm going to go to a bad page again. We'll call it Wingnut. Okay, so it's easy to remember. I'll try to go to Wingnut folder. Again, I get I am not found.html. No big deal. It's the same effect as before, but if I go out and look in Firebase, not there. I got to get to the console and my table or my database. Now I have this new thing here, and it's telling me that I got to hit a page named Wingnut that was no good. So now I know there's a bad link out there in the real world somewhere that's trying to get to a folder named Wingnut on my site. And maybe, maybe I had one called that 3 years ago. I forgot about, and, I deleted that folder or whatever, and now it's no good. So I want to do something with that now that I know it's there. By the way, that other stuff, the count is how many times it's been hit. Last refers, the page where the link came from, and last visit is a date time. It doesn't look that way, but it is. Anyway, but now I know there's a bad link called Wingnut. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back to my not found page. Now I'm going to go up to the top between the head and head tags, start a new script, and there I'm going to start saving up or start doing redirects so that if it comes in with this particular bad name, send them here. If it comes in with that particular bad name, send them there. All right, so I'm kind of going to control what happens with each of these bad links coming in on a case-by-case basis. I'll speed this up so you don't have to watch me type, but all the code will be in the link in the description for this video. Okay, so for this first I'm going to say if that last part came in as Wingnut, that is if they tried to go to something called Wingnut, send them to the home page instead, because that's the only page I have here. All right, but then you can see if you had other bad ones, you could do if blocks for those. Let's go ahead and run it. I'm going to run it. So I go to the home page, and I'm going to put in a bad one, and I said Wingnut. And now when I go there, I get sent right to the home page. There is no error. Okay, so I trapped that Wingnut error and sent them there. Now, you don't have to do this if business. I mean, you can just send all the bad links to your home page if you want. Nothing wrong with that. But either way, now that I've caught that error, I really don't need to save that in the database anymore either. All right, so I would probably go out to the database and go into that bad counts node and delete any that I've taken care of already. And when you point to it, you see the little X. And you could actually delete them all if they're all handled and just get rid of them all. Because once they're handled, you don't really need a record of them anymore. Now, for the hit counter, you wouldn't do that. You want that to keep growing. But anyway, so that's basically how you handle bad traffic coming in. All right, so if I run it one more time, again, you have to run it through amps or something. If I go to some bad page like howdy.html, well, I didn't handle that, so it still gets sent to notfound.html. If I go to wingnut, well, I did handle that, and it sent it to the home page. And now if I go to the database, it's not going to remind me about wingnut because that was handled before that code was called to get to the database. So when I look in here, wingnut is out of my life still. I'm not going to be reminded of that, but I will see that I now have a new bad one called howdy.html, and then I can go back into the page, do an if statement for howdy.html, and decide where I want to send that. Okay, makes sense? Kind of a lot, but like I said, I'll give you the code, and I'll put a link to the course in case you want to see the whole kit and caboodle spelled out a little more. I think it's about 90 minutes for counting the hits. And this is really just a spin-off from that for grabbing bad hits and handling them. All right? Thanks for watching. My name is Alan Simpson, and I hope to see you around the net. Bye-bye now.